Hello there, everybody. 𝗕𝗫𝗧𝗏 from FourFourTwo here. England are in the final of Euro 2024. It's coming home, innit? Alright, okay, so that's a ridiculous assertion to make at this point. They're still got to go play Spain, who've been the best team in the tournament, and he would make them massive underdogs going into that. But that was the best introduction I could possibly do, because if you haven't seen it already, Ross Kemp's already done the perfect introduction to any video.
Ollie Watkins!
So, now look, right, I know a fair number of you are going to be watching this with a slightly sore head. And God knows, I'm going to have one too, and you're probably thinking, it's not really like a tactical narrative in that game, is it? There's not really some big strategic point we can make about it. But actually, there is, yes, and not just there is, yes, but within there is, yes, one of the most interesting sort of tactical developments I think's ever happened under Gareth Southgate's reign as England manager. So once again, theoretically, England went with this back three, two wing backs, double 10 system that they used against Switzerland. But just in the same way a lot of people watched that game and didn't really see that happening, it was on and off. But it definitely was, certainly off the ball anyway, what they were trying to do. Like, if you look at the moment right before 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗔 scores that opening goal, you can see 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 is all the way back here. This is a back five. But because of the way the Netherlands set up in this game, England weren't really able to implement it the same way they had against Switzerland. So when they had the ball, it more or less went back to the 4-2-3-1. Now, if you have the particular misfortune of being in any football-adjacent WhatsApp groups with me, you will no doubt know over the past 2 days I've been banging on about how the Dutch system leaves this huge opportunity for England's midfield. You saw it quite a lot in the Turkey game because they do like to press with this front three here, but because of the ageing legs in their two centre-backs, Van Dijk and De Vrij, they don't push up as a unit. The defence sits really far off them. Now, when you have this sort of like pressing disconnect between your forwards and your defenders, the midfield basically has a choice of whether it jumps up to support the press and leaves the defenders really exposed, or it sits back and kind of lets them get on with it. And in the case of the Dutch, they largely sit back and allow them to get on with it, leaving this huge corridor behind the press where if you can get the ball into your midfielders, you can get turned and start making things happen. And so, pretty simply, to stop this problem, what the Dutch did was they just didn't press. They didn't allow England to have that space in this part of the pitch. They sat off the back four. They allowed them to have possession. And that might not sound like that big of a deal, but in all the sort of like latter stage of a tournament, big games that this Gareth Southgate side has played in, they've always had less possession than the opposition, full stop, never mind loads more. But if you're wondering why in that first half especially they looked so much better than they've looked throughout the entire tournament, that is because they took this possession for the first time and really used it well. And the two major reasons for that, they cannot go unpraised in this video, are Phil Foden and Kobbie Mainoo. Now, Mainoo especially, I really want to focus on here because what he was doing was harder to notice than what Foden was doing. Theoretically, this is not the game for him. You want him in a match where the pressure is going to be put in this part of the pitch so he can receive it, he can break that line, he can dribble, he can pass, he can get you up the field. But given that the territory had already been surrendered, maybe not what you want him for. But instead, this was his heat map. And you'll see he's doing virtually nothing in England's own half. A little bit here and there, but he's not getting on the ball in the build-up. He's not taking it off the back four. What he's doing instead is he's getting into this really deep Dutch defensive shape, finding the space and panicking them. Now, granted, still, you've got 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, you've got Phil Foden, you've got Jude Bellingham. He's probably not the player you most want on the ball in these situations, but that's not what he was doing. There was this brilliant moment in the first half where the ball gets turned over by the Dutch, the chance is broken down, and Mainoo comes out of nowhere and puts in this challenge. It's not a great bit of skill, it's not a great pass, it's not anything like that. It's just brilliant reading of the game, and he turns what could be a counter-attack for the Dutch into another attack for England. And that pretty much became the story of his entire match. Like, he was a one-man, high-pressing, duel-winning machine, which is an individual performance by a 6-year-old, remember, goes. I honestly think that is as impressive tonight as Yamal was last night. But as well as him, we just have to talk about Phil Foden tonight, because there's been so much said about him over the tournament. Why did England persist with him? Why does Southgate keep trying to get him in this side? You saw tonight, when it works, what he's capable of doing against a really, really good team. And I'm not going to get into it because we've talked about it like in every single other England video, this problem with him and Bellingham occupying the same zone. This sort of half a back five, half a back four system that England had really made Foden sing. Because on the one hand, because the back five is so lopsided, you're still getting width from Saka, but Bellingham also loves to float out into these positions. So all of a sudden he kind of became more of like a second striker behind Harry Kane. And what I think genuinely might have been a moment of awakening for him in this game was because the Dutch were sitting so deep and they were defending man for man and they have this sort of 4-3 shape in their own half. Foden must have looked at that and thought, hang on, I play for Man City. Almost every single Premier League game Phil Foden is in, he comes up against that exact kind of defensive block. Like a team desperately wanting to counter-attack against them, so the attackers aren't really helping much. They're kind of up the other end of the pitch, but also where the quality of defenders is very good man-to-man. With that light bulb going off over his head, all of a sudden you saw Phil Foden at Man City tonight. His ability to float off the defence in front of the midfield, find the ball, go left to right, receive it, drive, shoot, everything. It was all there. Now that goal he should have scored, that's nowhere near where you'd want Phil Foden to be to impact the game, but that's where he's read the situation, decided to get involved. So he gets on the ball, he gives it to a teammate. He knows now he's been marked by this midfielder and not the defenders, so he burns past him, he leaves him for dead, and all of a sudden he's an option to receive it moving into the box. Then it's a case of just individual technical skill. Were it not for that brilliant block on the line, he'd probably have scored, well, one of England's best goals in this tournament. But it wasn't just that dropping deep to evade everyone, then go on a run. He also kept finding space in this sort of favoured right-hand channel on the outside of the box. The defence are slightly too deep. He finds a gap in between the midfield. And instead of getting on the ball and doing what he's been doing in this tournament, which is dallying around and trying to play a short pass, he goes, no! Je suis Phil Foden, and he has a crack. And because of how negative the Dutch were and how good 𝗕𝗓 was and how alive and electric Phil Foden finally felt, England dominated that half. This is their entire pass map from the first 45 minutes. And I know, you're looking at that thinking, this is a complete mess, Adam. I can't learn anything from looking at that. But just take a second, you will notice that the majority of England's passes are in this part of the field and slightly higher up. They're not having to have the ball a lot in their own third because of how much territory the Dutch had let them have. But it also will not have escaped your attention that in the second half, they struggled a lot more. And this is how the pass map changed across those 45 minutes. It's not staggering, it's not dramatic, but you'll notice that where like the weight of them was here, the weight of them is now there. They got forced back. And that is fundamentally because the Dutch realised that this was not working. Their desire to keep the lines nice and compact to restrict England had seen them concede too much territory. So instead of having the forwards drop back to be nearer to everybody else, they had everybody else be near the forwards. They pushed right the way up. Now, this is brave and it was aggressive and it could have spectacularly backfired for them. But the one thing going for this idea, which England really hate, is that in Harry Kane, they have one of the greatest goal scorers of his generation still. There is no question about that. But when it comes to running in behind a defence, he is about as much use there as I would be. And there was this little moment in the first half that I think will have encouraged Koeman to make that change, right? 𝗕𝗓𝗓𝗓, that man again, the one-man ball-winning machine. He forces this turnover, and England have a brilliant counter-attacking situation into this exact space behind the Dutch defence. And I don't even need to play you this full clip, right? Look at Harry Kane's body language. Instead of facing towards goal, running in behind, pulling a defender away, creating space for his teammates, or possibly even getting into a through ball, he still just wants it to feed. He's got the exact same body language and positioning as the defenders. Now, that's not me digging him out. That's not me saying he's the source of all of England's problems. That's just how he plays. He's never had the pace, he's never had that particular desire. That ball is never going to be on for him, so you may as well push really high up to try and wrestle back control of the game. And this change really did work. Like, if you were watching that, it probably felt exactly like the Switzerland game for you. Really good start, good control of the ball, momentum changes, a goal nearly comes, and it feels like England are losing their grip on this match. But that's not what happened, is it? England actually went and won the game from that situation. And for all Gareth Southgate has, rightly and wrongly, been criticised through this tournament for a perceived bias towards certain players, never taking them off and sticking with them, and not making substitutions that respond to the changes in the game, that's exactly what he did. And I've heard it all through this tournament. Like, people in real life, my friends, the comment section in these very videos, all over social media, whatever opinion you have about Gareth Southgate, this change that he made here was exactly the kind of change he gets accused of never making, and it won the game. And why do you bring on Ollie Watkins instead of Ivan Toney? Because Ollie Watkins makes runs in behind. And when Cole Palmer receives this ball in the last minute of the game, you know for a fact Harry Kane would want this to feet and be about here. He'd get it under control, he'd get turned back in this direction, we'd all be screaming for Jude Bellingham to get into this gap here so we can take the pass on and he can get a chance away. And I've got no doubt in my mind whatsoever, by the way, that that is in that defender's mind, because he's not really bothered about the option of Watkins turning him, is he? But the touch from Watkins is not one of control, it is one of opportunity. He gives himself just a little yard off to his left-hand side. The defender sees it, he sort of motions across to try and make sure he can't run past him, but that's not what happens. He just takes the shot first time. And for all we talk about tactics and systems and percentages and giving yourself this and giving yourself that, at the end of the day, that ball goes in the back of the net because it's a brilliant strike. But it is also one that's almost a trademark of Ollie Watkins. He has scored almost that exact same goal, certainly goals from that exact same position, on the same foot, in the same sort of circumstance, time and time again for Aston Villa. And that change was ultimately made because with the game being like this and there being all that space in behind and potentially being able to stretch that defence out, there was a chance a player like Watkins could score a goal like that. And I am not here to try and change anyone's opinion on Gareth Southgate, either as a manager or on his time as the England boss. People already have their minds made up and it's not going to change by watching this one YouTube video. But just in the here and now, in the warm afterglow of that semi-final victory and that Ollie Watkins goal, you simply have to hand it to him. And like it or not, as a result of that one singular substitution, England somehow in the final of Euro 2024. What a time to be alive. Now it is 1:30 in the morning for me here, so I am going to leave it there. But while you're watching this, presumably on, what day is it, Thursday, Friday, or whenever, please do let me know what you made of that game in the comments below. Did England have more control? Did they finally look like the team we've wanted them to be this tournament? Or was there more than a huge slice of fortune in this match? I didn't even talk about the penalty, which, by the way, might be the single most fortuitous penalty I've ever seen given, but oh well. Yeah, actually, now that I mention it, that was a really, really awful call, wasn't it? But crucially also, not my problem. You can get me on any single social media you wish. Go on, I dare you, at @𝗕𝗫𝗓𝗍𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓, the 442 socials in the corner of the video. I'm still laughing because I'm still absolutely cock a hoop over that match. The magazine, I haven't got it here, it's in stores now. It's always in stores, you should always be buying it all the time. That's my opinion. Please, God, subscribe to us here on 442. We're having so much fun with the Euros content, and we're only going to keep doing all this fun stuff with the transfer window and the new Premier League season and everything like that. So that little button is your friend, but so am I. And I am now going to go to bed. And I'll wake up in the morning and think I've dreamt all of that. Bye.